Welcome back to On the Ground. I'm Benjamin King, CEO of Kinyu SCM, a supply chain focused employer of record based here in Guangzhou, China. And today I'm joined by Cece Tang, head of Hays Guangzhou office, and we're going to talk about what do people want? A talent attraction in China 2025. So thank you, Cece, for joining us and for hosting us as well.
Thank you, Benjamin, for having me in this session. Just a bit about myself. My name is Cece. I'm currently heading Hays Guangzhou office. Hays, we are a UK-listed recruitment agency, and we only focus on mid to senior level of recruitment. I'm here today to discuss our recently launched Hays Salary Guide 2025. Hays launches Salary Guide each year. We surveyed our clients, our candidates to understand market movement and also how does that change in candidates' motivation in looking for a new job.
Brilliant, thank you. I mean, if you want a copy of the Hays Salary Guide, we put a link in the description where you can check it out, and you issue it every year. But what's interesting, it's called the Hays Salary Guide, but it's not just the salary expectations that change each year. It's also about the employee sentiment, what they actually want, and also how active they are in the market. So do you want to just give a brief overview on what is the talent doing this year? How active are they?
Speaking of this, I think this is something that mostly interests me in the report this year. So we actually found that the active candidates in the market doubled comparing with the data last year. So last year, it was about 28% of the candidates we surveyed saying that they are interested in looking for a new job. But this year is 57% of the candidates who are open to a new job.
Well, 28% to 57%, that is a huge increase. And it's interesting how, this year they're so much more active. I mean, why? Do you know why? And what are they saying in terms of the activity?
Yeah, we are also surprised by that, to be honest. Last year, as we all know, the economy isn't very stable. So when we speak to the candidates, most of them chose to stay with the current company, which feel safer. But then I think under this year, as the market becomes more challenging, the candidates aren't feel safe even with their current employers. So that's, I think, part of the reason, because when we ask more questions on why you're looking for a job this year, most of them are over 40% are saying that they don't, feel very secure in their current job.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, so I do remember we had this conversation with last year or the year before where people were not moving because they were worried about the stability and moving to a new place. It was risky. Now you're saying it's almost risky not to have other options because they don't feel safe. So it's actually the same reasons, but just a different a change in perspective. Maybe against the backdrop, maybe. Yeah, I mean, maybe the companies, that they're working for, it could be they could feel something. Maybe their colleagues, some other department, have had cuts or globally as well. So yeah, it's really interesting. And so now that they are more active in the market, it also gives a lot more data and a lot more conversations on what people are looking for. So really, what sort of trends and priorities are you seeing this year compared to previous years?
In terms of those motivations, I think not surprising that salary, titles, career development are still important. But what we found different this year is that they actually, for candidates, it's actually also important for them to, again, gain the security in their current job, in their new job. So they, during the recruitment process, candidates are asking a lot of questions regarding the company's financial status, the company, whether the company has a long-term investment in China, and then where are those end customers, and then how are the culture and the colleagues in the company, and also the direct reporting line. I think around those questions, we can understand that candidates really want to, understand how stable the job is, after they apply for the new role.
Yeah, it's really interesting that. I mean, what you see on the surface in terms of like the salary, the size of the office, etc., really needs to be underpinned by a longer term plan. And I guess if they are moving, they're actively moving and looking for more options, they do want to, of course, find a more secure option than what they currently have.
Yes.
Yeah, and do you think around that it's also about the way that they're employed in China as well? Has there been any shift in that way?
The way I think we were referring to, the part of the way of recruitment and how how employers hire a candidate, right? And in the past, I think a consultancy job, because candidates value the take-home package, the salary most. So they are open to sort of like project-based roles or consultant roles, as long as the paycheck is in time. But then this year, I think there are fewer candidates who are open to these options. They are more looking into a permanent recruitment, because they want the company, again, the company has long-term plan in China. They want their salary to be compliant. And also they want the company to pay social insurance, because they don't know what happened 20 years ago when they retire. So there are more questions around whether the companies are paid social insurance. And also, I think for a project-based consultant role, the candidate, because the candidate will, start to worry after this project, what is going to happen, and then they are worried whether they can find a new role after a short period of time.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I mean, of course, people want to be paid well, but what you're saying is that there is less of a focus on that sort of short-term earning potential, and more of a focus on long-term planning. So stability in the company and what is the company's plan, but then also on whether or not they buy social insurance as well. And one of the thing about social insurance is when you do retire, the sort of the pension plan is linked to how much your average salary was, whether or not social insurance is being paid compliantly. Yeah, I was sort of quite surprised, because in our interviews with candidates, people are always asking about social insurance as well. And in a way, of course, it's really important, and I'm not surprised that candidates find it important. But what I am surprised about is that it's not a given, it's not granted as in terms of in the market that everyone actually pays it compliantly. So yeah, but now it's becoming, as they're looking into that long term, and it's definitely an element of sort of job security is asking whether or not social insurance is being paid, and therefore it's also it's really important to budget for social insurance. You also mentioned before about team sort of culture and engagement as well. What sort of what is a talent looking for in terms of engagement, and what does that mean in your eyes?
I'll get back to your question later. What you just described actually remind me of the gap. I don't face it a lot, right? Because I usually work with mostly established companies in China already. But I did have an example previously recruiting for a Danish client who set up a small office in Guangzhou. I think because they don't have their own HR and finance team, and then when they budget the salary for a candidate they want to recruit for, they didn't budget the social insurance. So when they share with us they want to recruit a 600K quality manager, we naturally feel that it's a 600K taking home gross salary on the candidate. So we shortlisted the candidates between the salary range of 450K to 500K, and adding on the salary increment, and that's around 600K. But then when we come to the offering stage, we then realized there was an issue because the client told us that, well, we are budgeting 600K. It already includes everything. It's a company cost rather than, I don't really understand what is, social insurance in China. So that's a potential gap. I think you probably feel that had that experience a lot more than me.
Yeah, I mean it's where there's a difference in models, and it's really important to define the difference between a recruiter and headhunting focused company and an employer of record company. So for us, we do some recruitment for our sort of junior or middle management roles, but we're primarily a supply chain employer of record, and so because we are employing them, we are taking on this cost of the employee, and that includes the social insurance. So when we're communicating with clients, we almost have to say it to cover ourselves. But it's not really the recruiter's responsibility to help the company budget their HR and their finance, because at the end of the day, social insurance it's about payroll and it's about tax. It's actually a function from the company's finance department that they need to work it out. So it's really important for companies to have that additional sort of understanding on the ground. And a key example of why it's the responsibility of the company and not the recruiter is the housing fund, because the housing fund is actually decided by the company. It could be 5%, it could be 12%, and the recruiter doesn't know that. So it's really, I think that these are all questions that candidates will ask, and the employer has to really be prepared for it. They have to budget for it, and they have to really, they should highlight. It sounds strange, but they should highlight that they employ compliantly. And I've sort of have been surprised about actually companies who don't employ compliantly.
Yeah, totally agree. And then back to your question, like how what is the candidate's expectation on the team engagement? I think if I remember on those clients who does not have a large team in China, and it's always easy for the candidate to feel very lonely, just to stand alone in China and have to explain to the regional or global team what is happening here, and then there is no team activity. I think it's so important to have a team, have a regular wrap-up activities to celebrate birthdays, success, and also outings, etc., to have the candidate feel engaged.
Yeah, I mean it's a really important point. I mean, from our perspective, a lot of we employ these teams on the ground. Sometimes it's individuals on their own. Sometimes it's building a team, and making sure that these candidates are engaged. They that people, their HR team and their wider team really understand sort of their challenges here on the ground. But I also think that sort of employee engagement sort of feeds into that element of stability as well. Because when a company is willing to spend time and money into these things, then it kind of shows that they're here for the long term, and B, they've got a budget for it. Because a lot of the time, companies will be, if there isn't that stability, then they will be focusing on trying to create the stability and more about, as opposed to maintaining it. So yeah, that is a key point. And so that sort of engagement, it can start from simple things like celebrating birthdays, milestones, and success, but then also up until training. I mean, do you see candidates asking about what sort of training they might get in a job?
Yeah, that's another. I think in Asian countries, training, whether the future employer will provide training and learning opportunities, is essentially important. But because we're still in a culture where everybody loves learning, so I think if the company is committed to provide a career opportunity and training opportunity to the candidate, that is definitely additional selling point to the candidate as well. And one thing that particularly mentioned this year is in the AI training, because AI is very, very popular, and the candidates know that this is the future, but then a lot of them are not equipped with the skills. So I think if the company can promote an AI culture, in addition, the company can add on some, basic AI trainings for them to how to adopt their AI tools to their daily work, and then that will be, attractive to the candidate as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point because, we're sort of constantly thinking about how we can help the teams that we employ sort of get access to the right training. But as you said, it's really, people really value how that kind of training can impact their daily work. And for our internal team, that would mean obviously looking at how we can use it from an HR perspective and also from a management perspective. But really, when employing teams on the ground, the companies themselves, our clients, should be the ones trying to look at the daily work and look at how it can be improved, and then also looking for the type of AI training plans that can be tailored towards their work instead of a lot of generic. There is a lot of generic AI training out there. I mean, a lot of it is geared towards marketing, but how can it be applied to supply chain? How could it be applied to quality management? How could it, demand planning and things like that? These are sort of more specific sort of uses of AI training that really needs to come from the company itself. Yeah. And so going back to mobility as well, do you see any sort of change between the direction of travel of between foreign and domestic firms? Do you see much talent sort of going from multinationals or foreign invested companies to domestic companies, or vice versa?
That's a very interesting question, because Hays set up our first China offices because we were initially supporting those foreign invested companies in China to recruit for mid to senior level of roles. But then now our domestic clients' contribution is around 50%. And that means our database actually are more open. So initially they are all built up for foreign companies, but now some of them are moving into domestic companies. I think for candidates at the stage where because there are a lot of growing Chinese companies, really, they move fast. Although their working environment is quite intense, but their decision making is very quick. And then some of them even provide a lot of stock options. So if the company has a really good brand, good supply chain with the marketing techniques, and then they are able to attract really good candidates who are well trained already by those foreign invested companies.
So you see those domestic companies were really looking for talent that have received that training from a sort of foreign multinational to go in there. And maybe there is a certain point in their career where they are looking for that high growth potential. But how about, I mean, like you said, when you first entered the market was to support those foreign multinationals, but and therefore you would have had to have, your talent pool would be from a lot of domestic companies. I mean, do you still see much sort of direction in travel in the other direction? So, talent going from the domestic companies into multinationals?
It's actually very rare to go the other direction, like domestic candidates moving into MNC. Because the training is very different, and also from the candidate's perspective, because their salary are combined with a lot of variable components. Some of them are looking into, very tied up with the company. If the company goes listed, and then they can cash out their stock options, etc. But then, candidates, if they are used to working in a fast-paced, decision-making sort of working culture, and also they have the expectation of, working for a few years, and then they can get financially free, even for a mid-level manager. And then it's also very difficult for them to go back to an MNC to get the, monthly paycheck.
Yeah, it's interesting how, we're in China, but there's the multinationals are able to sort of instill a totally sort of different structure into the operation that can be so different from domestic companies. Even though, I mean, a lot of senior management in the multinationals are also Chinese as well. So I guess, that sort of base layer of training and infrastructure that companies get at the beginning can sort of really impact, their sort of future career. And so, a key sort of difference, I mean, multinational, domestic company, foreign SME, a key sort of differentiator can be work-life balance. I mean, there are these high-paced startup companies, and not some of them aren't startups, just big sort of domestic firms where there is that sort of 996 work culture and long hours. But then also MNCs, are sort of known for, multinationals are known for, not the best work-life balance. So, is this work-life balance becoming more important in the market? What are people saying about it?
I won't say that 996 is just a Chinese thing. You will be surprised that, a lot of clients actually want us, even the foreign companies in China, they got the influence, and they also asked us to set up the interview in the midnight, like 9-10 p.m. In the evening, because they need to handle their regular workload, and then they can spare some time to interview the candidates. But working pace generally, definitely domestic are more, fast paced, and then work long hours. needs a lot of commitment from the employees, comparing with MNC on a more structured and working with the process and system, etc. So on this point, I think is something the whole employee and employer market needs to consider, because we do see a pool of candidates who is asking for more, personal and family time, and wants to be in a lifestyle where they can have a lot more work-life balance. We did have a period of time that companies start to initiate flex working hours in China. That was where the COVID was very serious, and then people cannot basically go to the office to work. But I was very optimistic back then, thinking that, well, this is probably the new way of working. Like we come to the office 3 days a week and then stay at home for 2 days. But then that didn't last long. So after the COVID has been controlled, and then we all go back to, I think, an even worse situation in terms of work-life balance.
Well, even worse than sort of during or even pre-COVID. I guess on that is obviously during COVID there was a bit of a necessity, but because of the sort of post-COVID economic impact, like you said, I think companies they really see it. When they're employing people, obviously it's a commitment to employ anyone, but the companies know it, and they are trying to almost get a lot out of the employees, which can, like you said, lead to people working, arranging interviews at 10, 11, sort of midnight. That's unbelievable. So it can be a problem in foreign firms as well as domestic firms. But how can a company sort of signal that they're not like that? Mm-hmm. As in, because it's difficult to really tell from the interview stage. I mean, apart from if they book the interview at 10 p.m. or later, but or weekends, yeah. How can companies signal that they have a good work-life balance?
I think it will tell from the interviewer, actually. Just be genuine and honest. I think it's just very wrong if you are already in a very fast pace and require the candidate to put a lot of commitment in the work. You just need to tell him or her upfront. But if you're the opposite, like the workload isn't very heavy and you want to put that into a selling point to the candidate, you can just, during the interview stage, probably share with, the normal employee working routine, like what is the starting point of work, and then do you actually require candidates to attend meetings after working hours? And also, do you provide annual leaves options, and then do you actually decline people's annual leave, etc.? So it's sort of the how do you actually manage the time of your employee, you can share during the interview stage. And also another indicator is definitely the turnover rate. If the company's turnover rate is very high, that's basically because most of them, some is because of a crazy boss, actually, but then others are because of the workload. It's supposed to be the workload of 2 people, but then they combined. That makes the role very difficult to sustain. So people come and go. So during the interview stage, candidates will also ask, how is the turnover rate in your company? And then if the company overall is stable, and then that could be also a selling point.
Yeah, I can also imagine as a recruiter, because we've seen this with a couple of companies, is when you're sort of engaging with all these talents, you're seeing CVs, and you're always asking, well, why is your reason for leaving certain jobs? And they might have a certain, they might say that about a certain company, and then once you start interviewing and sort of bumping into more candidates from the same company
for the same reason.
Yeah, for the same reason, and it's like, aha. So when that company comes back to you and they start to book their interviews at 10 p.m., then something's up. And also, I guess just linking back to the first point around stability and salary and things. I mean, high salary is one thing, but breaking it down into sort of that work-life balance, is that actually on an hourly basis, what sort of, is it a valuable salary? So do you see any, are you seeing sort of candidates sort of maybe considering sort of lower salaries, but with a more structured sort of time, working time?
This is just my personal guessing, honestly. So previously, when we interview candidates, every candidate wants to climb their career ladder, right? That means they don't care about work-life balance. They can accept investing like 7 days all in to perform at their job so that they can get a promotion. I think, firstly, because the economy is slowing down, there are not really that many jobs for everybody to climb the career ladder. So that's why some of them start to rethink their lifestyle to sort of think, well, whether it's worth it. So I'm spending like 12 hours a day into the job, but I'm actually not getting the sort of investment, the ROI that I really need. I'm not getting annual promotions. I'm not getting the salary increase that I really want. So and of course, COVID also changed a lot of things. So people start to care more about their personal health. So with those combined reasons, I do see a portion of people who care the work-life balance. They want to, have a lifestyle that they really want instead of, just putting work as a number one priority.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the return on investment, a high salary, long hours. Of course, people want that high salary, but a lot of people are putting in those long hours for career progression, aren't they? It's not just about that then and there. It's about developing that career, sort of taking on those responsibilities that should lead to salary increases. And yeah, there must be a point where, I think there is a point where candidates start to look at, employees start to look at what is my hourly rate here? I'm working these ridiculous hours, but actually I could be on a lower salary but work in a structured way, and the time, the value of my time becomes more important. Yeah. But yeah, it's always a bit of a trade-off. We hear that from some candidates, or we also we don't have the hard data, but we have this feeling. But then there are also there are people who really chasing that salary figure. So yeah, it's a balance, and when we're sort of promoting the jobs, we always try and promote that work-life balance. Sometimes it's in some candidates, we really have to chase after them to make sure they take their leave and that they take that properly. But then there are other candidates that they really value that, and they take that, and they work from home 1 day a week, and yeah, so it's interesting that that's becoming a much sort of greater part of people's job. And actually, just on that point is there was this whole Tang Ping, talk about Tang Ping, sort of like maybe Tang Ping, sort of lying flat I think maybe post-COVID or during COVID. But I think that companies shouldn't they shouldn't confuse that with people wanting work-life balance. Just because they are not sort of willing to do that sort of 996 doesn't mean that they're lying flat. It's just a slight change of priorities. People, they get this feeling that people want to work really hard, but they need to have that time, that flexibility to, for childcare and having that chance. So yeah, that's definitely something that I feel like people shouldn't confuse lying flat with work-life balance.
That's important. I have this young girl in my team who is an intern, and then she actually also shared a very interesting point. She said that she doesn't really agree that people see their generation as Tangping generation. And they said they just don't understand why people tied up with long working hours into determination at work. They prefer, to get the work done in their way, maybe shorter hours, different working scenarios, but more creative. I think that also reminds us that it's something that we should really drive towards, not just the long hours, but a more efficient way of working.
Yeah, working smarter instead of, working hard, but also working smart and just being more efficient with your time. And I think that AI training that you mentioned at the beginning also builds into that. It's like, do we really need to have all these people working so hard, just doing all this really manual database stuff, where or can it be managed by someone smarter and more efficient? And I think companies should realize that. And I think the companies who realize that are these large companies here in China. I think SMEs understand that because they're looking for efficiency savings everywhere, and they don't want to hire reams of people to work late into the night. It's probably more sort of larger domestic firms and multinationals who have that problem. Yeah. So, we've been talking about attracting talent and how, in the market, there's a lot of activity, people moving. But of course, companies want to retain their talent. So, what can companies do to improve retention in their company?
I've actually got asked on this a lot by our clients, and my first suggestion will always be, hire the right candidate so that, there is less retention, there is more on, working together. And so for hiring the right candidate, I do have a few suggestions. Firstly, it's definitely work with, someone like you or me. You understand the labor law, how to work in China, how to employ in a compliant way. And then for our side, we'd always see that the wrong decision was made because the client was trying to package a lot during the interview process. So in our job, it's always, to be honest upfront. If the boss is a bit crazy, we will tell the candidate, well, the boss is a bit crazy and emotional. Can you handle that? And if it's requires a lot of workload, it's a 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. job, we just need to tell the candidate upfront that this is the workload that the candidate needs to face. And then we'll also ask the candidate how is he going to balance his sort of work and life to cope with the job. And that's the initial two, basic advices. Then comes down to the first few months. We say first 3 months are essential. The first week is basically the HR process. We had experienced that candidate resign on the first day.
Right.
on his new job because, he sits in the office, nobody says hi, and then there is no HR comes to him and tell him what to do and then how his social insurance and benefits are paid, etc. So there are examples like that. So first day and first week, I believe, is all about being transparent and sharing on the company policy procedure to let the candidate be aware that how he can actually work with the company. And then on the first month, if the candidate resigns, is mostly because of the working relationship between the candidate and his direct reporting line. So the first month is always close aftercare, like what's the working pattern between you and your boss, and then what are the meetings, what are the meeting agendas, is there anything that you are feeling uncomfortable? So those questions are actually very important to understand, and also to help the candidate to be able to work with the new boss. And the first 3 months is if the first week is smooth and the first month is smooth, it's actually very rare for a candidate to resign in the second or third month. But we do see some resignation because of the targets are not aligned. Let's say during the first month, it's not specifically told her that during the probation, what type of targets that the person is in line. So it's also very important for the company to tell the employee that, this is your job, your JD, and also this is the short-term expectation, where this is the long-term, so that there is a proper plan in place to make sure that both sides are okay with the progress.
Yeah, it's like you said, a lot of it can come down into the first 90 days, and yeah, it's amazing that example where someone left on the first day because lack of engagement. And if that was a candidate from you, that means it must have been a relatively senior type of
it's not a junior candidate.
Yeah, that's quite incredible, that. And we always find, it just, if you get it right to begin with, and it's all structured, and the thing is that, like, if you set all of this out at the beginning, it will become immediately apparent to the candidate that it's not the right job for them.
Yeah.
And they won't sort of, overall, our experience is that they won't mess around, and they will realize it's not right for them. Yeah. But ideally, they haven't got to that place. And you mentioned about hiring the right candidate. It's like there's a saying, it's hire slowly, fire quickly. But the hiring part is making sure that you've got the right candidate, working with partners, getting the right advice as well. Because with our clients, sometimes when we hire we're hiring the first position in China, they can be quite keen to pack in lots of different responsibilities into this one role, which if you do find someone who can do all of those things, they might be not great at all of them. and there are obviously generalists and specialists in the market, but making sure that you hire the right the right expectations are put on against the talent market, and we're always keen to try and sort of make sure that not too much responsibility is put on the first hire, and make sure that the client has this plan to hire more people if they need those functions. And like I said, also just being upfront at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I remember we did an HR round table, and I remember someone saying, the relationship with the boss could be a big reason why people might not stay. But also, like, that is really important, but it shouldn't just be the job and the structure shouldn't really be dependent on the relationship either. So we've had this experience where going back to the social insurance point of view, the social insurance wasn't paid compliantly, and at the beginning some people are okay with it to get the job, and maybe their salary is a bit higher, but then as the relationship with the company breaks down, or with the boss breaks down, they start to look at the areas which are non-compliant, and then potentially take some action there. So that's a really sort of key point. And actually one of our previous episodes, the law firm sort of highlighted the biggest dispute between foreign companies and the employees, Chinese employees, is about social insurance. So when people do, if you want to stay, the relationship with the boss, compliance, structured approach to everything is really important.
Yeah, because China labor law protects employees very well. So if the company doesn't pay social insurance in a compliant way, although the employee, they've obtained a sort of verbal consent, it's okay to do this, but then the employee always have the right to, sue back on those, not paid properly.
Yeah, I think even written, as that episode. Maybe we can add a link to that. You can check it out. There's a key point in it where it's like, even if there's a written contract around the social insurance, the employee has no liability on that, even if they agreed to it. It's all on the company. So that structured approach is so important, and getting that right at the beginning, so people are, they know where they stand. Clarity in their job, in their responsibility, and in the direction. Yeah, it's really important. So hopefully, those companies wanting to retain their talent, it all feeds into stability as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So why do people stay? What are candidates in the market looking for? They're looking for stability. Why would people stay? It's for the same thing.
Yeah.
And what sort of new roles can you see coming to China? Is there any direction of travel there?
If I remember correctly, your major desk is supply chain, right? And I also, start my career recruiting for supply chain professionals, mid to senior level across South China. Those roles are still popular in the market, but during particularly last year, we do see an increasing number of R&D and engineering positions in China. Not only the domestic, not to say because they need to, design their own products and brands, so there is a need there, but also for foreign invested companies. They used to have their core R&D center in their global headquarters, but then now part of the reason is because China is a large market for them as well. So with an R&D center in China, they can supply their clients in a better way and understand the requirements from the client to design better products that is suitable for China market. But another reason on the candidate supply side, we also see that because China during those years have already developed a great pool of candidates who are very skillful in the engineering capability, but also with a lot of international exposure, knows how to work with a global team, as well as their language is also workable, meaning that they can speak workable English to communicate with different teams. So that's why also in terms of the candidate supply, it's possible to actually set up an R&D center in China.
Yeah, that is really interesting in terms of the positions. I mean, we have an example of that actually, because we do hire a lot of supply chain manufacturing roles, but one of our roles is an it's a technical project manager, and the engineering background there is a key part of it, and they work for a multinational, his background, he worked at Honeywell and Intercontinental before that. These are sort of big companies, and it's just corporate communication is something sort of a cross-cultural that is challenging, and it really does require that sort of experience in that environment. Sort of using like Microsoft Teams to people's detriment. It's to be great at Teams is not really a very exciting skill, but in a corporate environment it is, and that is probably what's kept roles outside of China. And like you said, now these roles can be placed in China, not only because the R&D is actually for China, but also because the supply chain and manufacturing is in China. So it does make sense anyway. What was holding them back was that communication with the global team. But as the talent sort of adapts to that requirement, so it means that more positions like that.
Yeah.
So it's probably also a direction of travel for us to look for more engineers in China as well. Also potentially on cost as well. I mean, do you see companies looking at that for cost saving?
Cost, it occurred to me that so if a client wants to recruit a sales role in China and has no experience in China market previously, they will find Chinese candidates quite expensive. So there was one time that my client came to me saying that, well, they want to develop China markets and they want to find a business development manager, and asked me to, provide the market salary range to him. And then I advised back saying that in your industry is around 500 to 600K on an annual package. And the client actually replied that, well, this is too expensive for us because our APAC sales director is at similar pay. So it's basically impossible for us. So that's on the other side. Some of the roles in China are not as cheap as people imagined. But on the R&D engineering side, I think it's still quite cost effective, because I have more feedback from clients saying that, well, they initially was trying to relocate some of the key R&D role into China to try out. And then they realized that it's very cost effective. The candidates is able to speak workable English, and the technical capability is also, as they expected. So that on R&D, I think we are still cost effective.
Yeah, I mean, particularly on that sort of business development, China is a huge market. There's lots of opportunity here, but it is tough. So you should never underestimate the investment that's required to make it here, to market your goods or services here. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Unfortunately for us, we do some related to like supply chain services. Some companies are interested in having an account manager or BD manager here, but fortunately for us, we're still sort of very focused on the supply chain, manufacturing, and engineering. But yeah, so really to summarize, what we've discussed. The market is very active, but not for the reasons why you would think. Candidates don't necessarily feel secure in their role here, so they are looking for, they're active in the market and they're looking for better opportunities. And what we discussed, really, it all comes down to they don't feel secure in their current jobs. So they're they're looking for that stability. And stability can come with compliance, so social insurance, long-term planning. That is one part of it. Training, development, particularly in this new era of AI, encouraging training and making sure that they're in a position that future-proofs themselves and their career. So that's really important. As well as engagement, culture, engagement, and understanding the needs of the candidates, work-life balance as well. These are all things that actually to implement is not necessarily a huge cost, but it's just trying to get the right approach to that can actually add a lot of value. You can attract the right talent, and you can retain the talent, right? I mean, Cece, do you have anything to add to that, or?
I think you've summarized all the 1 hour discussion we've just had. But just to remember, if you are a company who wants to recruit in China and has no China market experience, it's definitely essential for you to read some report. You can download a free copy from the link that Benjamin is going to provide in the comments. And also to work with professionals who can actually provide you with those knowledge. So we are speaking about retention, but I just want to emphasize it's always to hire right first, the right candidate with the right process, so that you get everything right in the first place, and then followed up with the training, the team engagement, etc. that Benjamin just mentioned.
Yeah, thank you, Cece. So yeah, just as a reminder, the Hays Salary Guide is in the link in the description. And also, please like and subscribe to this channel. We're bringing more experts onto the show. And today we've heard from Cece. So thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you.